Hello and welcome to another edition of Mr. Naughton's Health Class Guided Lecture. Today we're going to be talking about the subject of suicide, wrapping up our depression and mental health part of the unit. So we're going to start off with some true-false questions. We'll just go right through them and explain why they're true or why they're false. True or false, people who talk about suicide usually do not commit it. This is false. The reason is because talk of suicide is one of the warnings. So if people are talking about it, even if it seems like it's a joke, even if it seems like they're not serious, there's usually some truth behind the talk. So it is a warning sign. Another true or false, suicide happens without warning. This is another false statement. There's going to be several indications that a person is contemplating suicide. Even sometimes people follow through with suicide plans, and there's many warning signs that happen for someone who is considering and following through on suicide. Fewer adolescent boys than girls attempt suicide. This is true. More girls attempt suicide, more boys succeed with suicide. The reason this is the more boys succeed is because boys and men tend to use the means that are more lethal, like guns and weapons, while girls and females will use other means of the attempt. Suicidal people are fully intent on dying. This is a false statement. Indications that a person is suicidal are often a cry for help. Sometimes people don't see any other way out other than this, and usually if people can make them see or help them see that there is another way out, they'll usually tend to stick around, and the suicidal thoughts or suicide attempt will not be. Once a person is considered suicidal, he or she is suicidal forever. This is false. And improvement following a suicidal crisis means that the suicidal risk is over. This is also false. Attempts at suicide are often repeated, but just because someone has tried suicide or considered suicide once does not mean that they'll be suicidal forever. But if they do try and attempt suicide, they are at a risk for another suicide attempt or multiple suicide attempts. Suicide strikes rich people much more often. This is a false statement. Poverty causes high stress and little d depression. So suicide strikes more often than not people who are of low economic status and who are dealing with poverty, not a lot of money, in bad situations. Suicidal tendencies are inherited. They are genetic. This is false. What is genetic in some cases is the inability to cope with stress, and we all know that major depression, the medical illness of big D depression, is genetic. All suicidal individuals are mentally ill. This is false. Suicidal thoughts may be induced by drugs and alcohol. Studies show that all people have probably contemplated suicide at some time in their lives. This is unfortunately a true statement. Most people have thoughts of suicide at some time in their life as an escape or a method of revenge or as a means of no way out. So, I'll give you some statistics about suicide. 9 out of 10 suicides take place in the home between 3 p.m. and midnight, and this is because most people will be coming home from school or work. They'll be inside their home where most likely other people are not home yet, or they're in the comfort of their own home. They're in a place where no one is going to bother them, like in their room, especially for adolescents and teens. If they're in their room from 3 p.m. to midnight, sometimes their parents don't bother them. So this is where an opportunity to actually go through with it where no one's going to find out for a while. And 80% of those who commit suicide are suffering from the medical illness of major depression prior to their attempt. So that's why identifying depression as a medical illness is a huge thing, because 80% of people who commit suicide are considered to be suffering from the medical illness of depression. 60% of people who commit suicide are drug or alcohol abusers. So drug and alcohol has a huge role, a huge factor in suicide. And 80% of suicides, people were actually under the influence of drugs or alcohol when they committed suicide. Drugs and alcohol give people an opportunity to follow through on things like suicide that normally, if they were sober, they would not follow through on it. Here are some warning signs that can indicate that one is or may become suicidal. They have a suicide plan. They're giving away their most beloved possessions, the things they care about and love the most. They may have previously attempted to actually try suicide. They appear to be accident prone. They might have aggressive or passive behaviors, and you can see mood or personality changes and severe sadness or severe depression, little d, depression. Some more other warning signs is psychotic functioning, maybe a death in a family or some type of tragic event in the family, a romanticized attitude about death, a real interest or a taking to death, possibly a recent rejection that could be romantic or otherwise, or a setback in school or a job or something that is not going right for them in their lives. So what can you do to help? Well, if you think that someone is suicidal, you need to stay with that person. Don't let that person leave your side. Stay with that person. Talk about it. Let's talk about how we can get you help is an example of what you can say. And then tell an adult, tell a parent, tell a counselor, tell somebody, call somebody. There are hotlines available that we're going to talk about. There's a lot of things that you can do to help somebody else out who's considering suicide. This is just a suicide action plan, a plan to practice and put into action when dealing with a potential suicide. You need to recognize warning signs and identify them as a crisis, as something real. If it's yourself, you need to identify and use internal coping strategies without needing to talk to somebody else. And if that doesn't work, you need to make contact with at least 4 people as a way to distract yourself from suicidal thoughts and urges. If still the suicide thoughts are still there, you need to contact family members or friends who may help to resolve the crisis and with whom you could talk to about the thoughts of suicide. Then you need to contact mental health professionals or agencies, hotlines, hospitals, 911 even. And then at the very, very least, you need to get yourself away or reduce the potential for use of lethal means. Like if there's a gun in the house, or if there's some type of weapon that's nearby, or you're walking somewhere where there's high altitude. So reduce the potential for any of these things. We have a short video for you. We're gonna watch it. It should be about 11 minutes long, and then we'll be done with the suicide lesson.
For a long time in my life, I felt like I've been living 2 different lives. There's the life that everyone sees, and then there's the life that only I see. And in the life that everyone sees, who I am is a friend, a son, a brother, a stand-up comedian, and a teenager. That's the life everyone sees. If you were asked my friends and family to describe me, that's what they would tell you. And that's a huge part of me. That is who I am. And if you're asked me to describe myself, I'd probably say some of those same things. And I wouldn't be lying, but I wouldn't totally be telling you the truth either. Because the truth is, that's just the life everyone else sees. In the life that only I see, who I am, who I really am, is someone who struggles intensely with depression. I have for the last 6 years of my life, and I continue to every day. Now, for someone who has never experienced depression or doesn't really know what that means, that might surprise them to hear, because there's a pretty popular misconception that depression is just being sad when something in your life goes wrong. When you break up with your girlfriend, when you lose a loved one, when you don't get the job you wanted. But that's sadness. That's a natural thing. That's a natural human emotion. Real depression isn't being sad when something in your life goes wrong. Real depression is being sad when everything in your life is going right. That's real depression, and that's what I suffer from. And to be totally honest, that's hard for me to stand up here and say. It's hard for me to talk about. And it seems to be hard for everyone to talk about it, so much so that no one's talking about it. And no one's talking about depression, but we need to be, because right now it's a massive problem. It's a massive problem. But we don't see it on social media, right? We don't see it on Facebook. We don't see it on Twitter. We don't see it on the news, because it's not happy, it's not fun, it's not light. And so because we don't see it, we don't see the severity of it. But the severity of it, the seriousness of it is this. Every 30 seconds, somewhere, someone in the world takes their own life because of depression. And it might be 2 blocks away, it might be 2 countries away, it might be 2 continents away, but it's happening every single day. And we have a tendency as a society to look at that and go, so what? So what? We look at that and we go, that's your problem, that's their problem. We say we're sad and we say we're sorry, but we also say, so what? Well, 2 years ago was my problem. Because I sat on the edge of my bed, where I'd sat a million times before, and I was suicidal. And if you were to look at my life on the surface, you wouldn't see a kid who was suicidal. You'd see a kid who was the captain of his basketball team, the drama and theater student of the year, the English student of the year, someone who was consistently on the honor roll and consistently at every party. So you would say I wasn't depressed, you would say I wasn't suicidal, but you'd be wrong. You'd be wrong. So I sat there that night beside a bottle of pills with a pen and paper in my hand, and I thought about taking my own life, and I came this close to doing it. And I didn't. So that makes me one of the lucky ones, one of the people who gets to step out on the ledge and look down but not jump. One of the lucky ones who survives. Well, I survived, and that just leaves me with my story, and my story is this. In 4 simple words, I suffer from depression. And for a long time, I think I was living 2 totally different lives, where one person was always afraid of the other. I was afraid that people would see me for who I really was, that I wasn't the perfect, popular kid in high school everyone thought I was, that beneath my smile there was struggle, and beneath my light there was dark, and beneath my big personality just hid even bigger pain. See, some people might fear girls not liking them back, some people might fear sharks, some people might fear death, but for me, for a large part of my life, I feared myself. I feared my truth, I feared my honesty, I feared my vulnerability, and that fear made me feel like I was forced into a corner. I was forced into a corner and there was only one way out. And so I thought about that way every single day. And if I'm being totally honest standing here, I've thought about it again since, because that's the sickness. That's the struggle, that's depression, and depression isn't chicken pox. You don't beat it once and it's gone forever. It's something you live with. It's something you live in. It's the roommate you can't kick out. It's the voice you can't ignore. It's the feelings you can't seem to escape. And the scariest part is that after a while, you become numb to it. It becomes normal for you. And what you really fear the most isn't the suffering inside of you. It's the stigma inside of others. It's the shame. It's the embarrassment. It's the disapproving look on a friend's face. It's the whispers in the hallway that you're weak. It's the comments that you're crazy. That's what keeps you from getting help. That's what makes you hold it in and hide it. It's the stigma, so you hold it in and you hide it, and you hold it in and you hide it. And even though it's keeping you in bed every day and it's making your life feel empty no matter how much you try and fill it, you hide it, because the stigma in our society around depression is very real. It's very real, and if you think that it isn't, ask yourself this. Would you rather make your next Facebook status say you're having a tough time getting out of bed because you hurt your back? Or Or you're having a tough time getting out of bed every morning because you're depressed. That's the stigma. Because unfortunately, we live in a world where if you break your arm, everyone runs over to sign your cast. But if you tell people you're depressed, everyone runs the other way. That's the stigma. We are so accepting of any body part breaking down other than our brains. And that's ignorance. That's pure ignorance. And that ignorance has created a world that doesn't understand depression, that doesn't understand mental health. And that's ironic to me because depression is one of the best documented problems we have in the world, yet it's one of the least discussed. We just push it aside and put it in a corner and pretend it's not there and hope it'll fix itself. Well, it won't. It hasn't, and it's not going to, because that's wishful thinking. And wishful thinking isn't a game plan, it's procrastination, and we can't procrastinate on something this important. The first step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. Well, we haven't done that. So we can't really expect to find an answer when we're still afraid of the question. And I don't know what the solution is. I wish I did, but I don't. But I think it has to start here. It has to start with me. It has to start with you. It has to start with the people who are suffering, the ones who are hidden in the shadows. We need to speak up and shatter the silence. We need to be the ones who are brave for what we believe in, because if there's one thing that I've come to realize, if there's one thing that I see as the biggest problem, it's not in building a world where we eliminate the ignorance of others. It's in building a world where we teach the acceptance of ourselves. We're okay with who we are, because when we get honest, we see that we all struggle and we all suffer, whether it's with this, whether it's with something else. We all know what it is to hurt. We all know what it is to have pain in our heart, and we all know how important it is to heal. But right now, depression is society's deep cut that we're content to put a Band-Aid over and pretend it's not there. Well, it is there. It is there, and you know what? It's okay. Depression is okay. If you're going through it, know that you're okay. And know that you're sick. You're not weak. And it's an issue, not an identity, because when you get past the fear and the ridicule and the judgment and the stigma of others, you can see depression for what it really is. And that's just a part of life. Just a part of life. And as much as I hate some of the places, some of the parts of my life depression has dragged me down to, in a lot of ways I'm grateful for it. Because yeah, it's put me in the valleys, but only to show me there's peaks. And yeah, it's dragged me through the dark, but only to remind me there is light. My pain, more than anything in 19 years on this planet, has given me perspective. And my hurt's forced me to have hope. Have hope and to have faith. Faith in myself. Faith in others. Faith that it can get better, that we can change this, that we can speak up and speak out and fight back against ignorance. Fight back against intolerance. And more than anything, learn to love ourselves. Learn to accept ourselves for who we are, the people we are, not the people the world wants us to be. Because the world I believe in is one where embracing your light doesn't mean ignoring your dark. The world I believe in is one where we're measured by our ability to overcome adversities, not avoid them. The world I believe in is one where I can look someone in the eye and say, I'm going through hell. And they can look back at me and go, me too, and that's okay. And it's okay because depression is okay. We're people. We're people, and we struggle and we suffer and we bleed and we cry. And if you think that true strength means never showing any weakness, then I'm here to tell you, you're wrong. You're wrong, because it's the opposite. We're people, and we have problems. We're not perfect, and that's okay. So we need to stop the ignorance, stop the intolerance, stop the stigma, and stop the silence. We need to take away the taboos. Take a look at the truth and start talking. Because the only way we're going to beat a problem that people are battling alone is by standing strong together. By standing strong together. And I believe that we can. I believe that we can. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, until next time, this is Mr. Naughton signing out. Thanks for listening.